to reinforce behavior. So it's a behaviorist model, right? And now the third is undefined, really. But it's clear that the first two, at least in the way that we're administering them, are tremendously costly.
Well, not in this country, but I mean, look at Norway. I mean, those people are making incredible advances, and they actually treat people like one of their main ideas is that if we are trying to reform these people to fit back into society, we need to have a correctional system that lets them practice as though like they're living in regular society. So they have access to TV, they have jobs. You know, they live on an island actually. You know, I was watching one program. They were getting no. You know what? I think it was it at the end of one of Michael Moore's films, maybe. But whatever. The point is that they have homes. They interact. It's mostly if it's men, it's all male. They don't have access to other genders. But they don't. Their homes don't have bars. You know, that's one of the main things. You know, they live in a regular home, kind of like a college dormitory setting almost.
It's a version of your banishment idea.
Excuse me, Mr. Williams, you got to go now. Well, we're going to say adios to you, but we'll keep on talking here. And thank you for your time and your input.
Anytime.
Right on.
I'm always here as you need me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, now you were saying that, Charlie, that I agree with you too, in the essence of the paradigm that you just stated. But I believe also that it's there's a third matter of doing it is psychological. If they can work with your mind, that's a form of punishment also, because it's a form of control. Everything comes back to one thing. It's a matter of control.
No, I'm comfortable with that. I mean, yeah, you gotta, there's the people that want to live their life a certain way, and there's some people that are trying to disrupt that. You know, like I said, the ultimate resolution, the most fair and just resolution is war. It's the state of war where, like, this is my position, this is your position, I'm not changing. I think this is what I need to fight. Really, it's sad. But that's the only way to really resolve it. The point is, it's this in between that we're trying. What can we do? Where can we compromise to avoid a war?
These guys considered their Revolutionary War. The first thing they talk about a distinction between the word revolutionary and the word revolt. They had a Revolutionary War. In other words, it was like a business transaction process. It wasn't like the French Revolution, where with the Reign of Terror. We didn't do that. That's what they're so proud of themselves for saying it. But the point is that nobody's listening. They talk about people rioting and carrying on, but nobody listens until somebody gets fed up and starts throwing rocks. Then you get their attention.
Though a static consciousness, so that the same level of consciousness will adhere that has always adhered, which is that the primary question is dealing with the issue of conflict and war, and war being kind of the cleansing factor, or but that assumes a static level of consciousness as opposed to an evolutionary model of consciousness. And unfortunately, there's a lot of evidence for the static.
Actually, if you could clarify on what you mean by static and evolutionary.
Sure. Well, in other words, so you have a conflict paradigm, right, in which the whole issue is resolving conflict, right? The whole U.S. government is about resolving conflict, right? Isn't it? In a way, you have different branches of government that are sort of set at loggerheads against each other to balance each other out, right? Or you have a war over the status of some citizens, whether they're going to be admitted as full human beings or not, or over economic ownership.
It ain't going to happen.
Right? So this is the paradigm that you see over and over again throughout history, kind of repeated, right? So the question is, well, naturally we just assume that therefore implies a static level of consciousness, and that there are just different angles we take on how to handle this issue.
It ain't going to happen, Peter. You know why I don't believe it'll ever happen? Because you're still talking about somebody having control over somebody else. When we talk about government, we're talking about somebody who's able to do something better than me, so I allow them to take over my life, and I submit to I defer to their authority.
Right.
Okay? when I defer to your authority, I'm giving you authority right over me, right?
That's right.
So I'm giving you control over me. So as long as that situation, hey, is there, as long as that situation exists, it can be abused.
Any situation can be abused. Actually, you know what? I really don't have a problem with that that model that you just presented. That you basically decide who gets to have control over you. It seems to me one of the best forms of a political system would be a democratic dictatorship where you elect who's going to be your dictator. You know, and essentially, I mean, it's just a colorful way of basically saying that I'm just picking somebody who's going to tell me what to do. Because in a way, you have to do that because there's going to be people making decisions on a level which you might not be enough informed about. I mean, I don't know everything about how to run a country. It would be better, you know, just as I don't know how to doctor myself. I don't know everything about that. So I hired, you know, basically a politician or a ruler to do that job for me, just as I hire a doctor to heal me.
Sure, but listen to this reasoning, though. Excuse me. Listen to this reasoning, for example. Well, I have two choices in November to vote for, practically speaking, for the American presidency, right? So if I vote for a third party, you know, I'm kind of opting out of the system in a way, right? Because the preponderance of votes are going to either go to either the Republican or Democratic candidate. So if I make my choice to choose to vote for someone else who with a different vision of ruling, right, in a way I'm sort of opting out of the system in a practical
Real quick though, just to interrupt, that could be solved very easily by switching from a plurality voting system to approval voting.
Well, thank you. I would like to see that happen, but as the system stands currently,
right,
I'm essentially opting out. So we're trapped in this mentality, right, which says, well, the system is what it is, and if we have to accept it, and so therefore we feed it. So there's this self-defeating aspect to it.
Oh, so
right, in which we feel we must choose either candidate A or candidate B, otherwise we're marginalized. And so everyone making that game theory kind of choice is as a total, taken in total, is the system.
Right.
Is the system. So when every individual person goes, nope, that system is done, I'm now with the third party, then the system collapses and we have a different system.
Right.
But who's
and you can apply the same mentality to conflict resolution.
Who's controlling this new system? Because we saw a new government suddenly come into being in Syria or what was it? Gaddafi's country? What was it?
Libya.
We saw a whole new regime come in, and nobody knew really who the players were, which was commented on before it happened. But we don't. And again, I think we might have backed the wrong people.
It's fluid. It's still gelling.
Don't you think that by this time, it's like I tell people all the time, how many times you going to be fooled by the same trick?
Well, that's up to the people, right? You can be. You can only be, well, look at Tahrir Square, okay?
Okay.
Eventually, a bunch of people decided, no, we're not slaves, in fact. And you can kill us if you want. We're going to keep coming. And that's the end of the game for you. It happened. So it does happen. Now, what replaces it? That doesn't, part of the problem is that after the great game, after the great election, after the great revolution, everyone goes back to sleep. Well, we're done now. We did the job.
Yeah, it's not enough to have a revolution. You have to live revolutionarily. It's part of your everyday thing.
That's it. And so I'm not saying the Egyptians have done that, because in my opinion, from what I've been following it doesn't appear that they have. It seems like they're still on point in terms of trying to keep the matter headed in the direction they want it. But it's certainly true that there is a certain attitude. For example, when people elected Barack Obama, who I think in fairness said, you have to keep the fire on me. You have to keep the fire under me, to keep me on point.
Right.
And a lot of people just went, hey, we won. Go back to sleep.
Well, I think it's a failure to really criticize yourself. We're good at criticizing other folks, but we're very, we have a problem when we have to criticize ourselves. Self-examination. How in the hell are you going to get good at something if you won't admit to what you don't know and what you're bad at? In other words, people who are athletes, Michael Jordan developed that outside shot because he knew that would help his game. But he had to admit that he needed an outside shot before he could develop that shot. So this is what we have to do in life. We have to see things that we know that we have to attempt to change, to get better at, and the only way you're going to do it is being honest with yourself. I suck at this, I suck at that, and and go to work on it, improve it. But we don't do that, we're lazy. So we live our whole lives frustrated and angry at the world because we won't get off our own tootsies and do what we need to do for ourselves to build ourselves up to the potential we want to be. So we need to start talking more about people doing things. I walked through, I'm going to say this, I walked through Rainbow Beach the other day and was sick. Before I could get to the field house, I walked through a whole row of poop. And the stuff was, I saw one of the maintenance guys out there on the truck. They all ride trucks. They don't step in the poop. Okay? I said, well, look, man, why is it like this? He said, they ought to clean up after their dogs. I said to him, well, what do you guys get paid for? You're not stepping in the poop. You're using taxpayers' money for the gas. You're using taxpayers' equipment to ride around over the poop. You're just using taxpayers to death, but we walking in poop. You see what I'm saying? People need to understand. Everybody, you can't have a scrap on the side of what you got to grow up. You got to start caring about things.